Hi, this is Michael from Telco. I'm here at the Barber Shop Studios with Rob, who produced my new single, -9, and we're just going to take you through some of the tracks and a little bit about how the song came to be. So basically what happened was we were putting together a demo to follow up for a song for my EP that we put out in September. And I kind of wanted to do something that sounded a little bit different than what I had put out on the EP, something a little bit brighter. And I rediscovered this voice note of an old song that was just labeled -9. And it was because it was the amount of keys that I had to transpose it down when I was writing the song. I just brought it back and I threw it into a Pro Tools session. I just started playing around with it. And at the time I had like I was playing around with this really like Journey-esque type piano riff that, I don't know if you could pull it up in the bridge.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing that I had for the song, and I was just playing around with that. I threw it into a Pro Tools session, and then I rediscovered this old song, -9, and I just slammed the two together and decided to just start making this demo of this new song. And I added this like very 80s sort of drum beat, which was just chugging along in the back of it. I wanted it to sound like somewhat Bleachers, Bruce Springsteen-esque. Let me pull it up here. Yeah, so I added this in over the demo that I had on my voice notes, and it just became... So I had this drum beat, I had the Journey thing, and then I had this old song, and I started blending the three together into this monster of whatever it was going to turn out to be. And so I was building out this demo, and I sent it to Eric, who helped produce this song. And we decided that we wanted to like make it into something that sounded a lot bigger and brighter than what we were doing on the EP. And we started building it out. He added a bunch of guitar layers and stuff like that. And we wanted to emulate like sort of the feel of like The Cure during their sort of pop era. And when we were building out the demo and we got to the chorus and we had this really like poppy guitar with this line of "it's not as bad as it seems to be," it started just veering a little too far into like cheesy territory. And at that point we kind of like hit a brick wall because we didn't really know what to do from there. So we took this demo, and that's when we came here to the barbershop and started working with Rob to flesh out the song from that point. So we brought him this demo. We liked where it was heading, but it was veering far too much into cheesy territory than we wanted. And we wanted to try and scale that back and keep like the honest nature of the song, but get rid of that over the top like bubblegum feeling and still just keep it kind of hopeful and optimistic. So that's when we brought it to Rob.
And when Mike and Eric brought us the song, first thing we started, when we talked about the drums, is we went in, set up 21 mics on the drum kit, really just kind of made this whole larger than life thing, bunch of different room mics. We had 2 different bass guitars in the song. One was just going through Ampeg. Second one was actually, we chorused it out, used, there was a piece of gear in the 80s that was really popular called the H3000. Kind of got reinvented now. It's a lot of like modern indie pop, but like, something about the original hardware is really cool. And then we just added a bunch of, actually want to dive into the guitars?
Yeah.
So, we'll start with, you want to start with the chorus?
Yeah.
Palm muty guitar going on.
Yeah, so this was like the Cure sounding between these two here. These were like the Cure sounding sort of jangly guitars that we wanted. These were what Eric brought over, and then when we added that, we had the lower guitar.
Yeah, we ended up just replaying them.
Yeah, exactly.
We added spring reverb down. This is, I think, my Mustang. I think we used, right?
Yes.
Cranked spring reverb on that, and just went for that very almost Beach Boys-y thing. Also had this guitar.
Yeah, and this was our mutual love of bleachers. We wanted like a don't take the money type of guitar, and that's where this came from, which is like my favorite part of the whole mix. But I think the most important part for what we did with the chorus was, because all this guitar layer stuff was great, but what we were struggling with was finding a drum pattern that was going to keep it from being like this over the top type of thing. And so we decided on doing almost like an anti-chorus when it came to the drums in the chorus. So if you want to pull up like the transition into the drums. So this was the verse beat that we had was this very like 80s feeling. Yeah. So transitions into this very open and sort of like sparse guitar part or drum part instead of something big and overblown. And then that lets like the guitars kind of slide in and do their thing without becoming like this over the top sort of like syrupy sort of sound. So once we had those drums, that's when I knew like, okay, we're gonna actually get this song finished, because there's always a moment where you think like the song's never gonna get done because it's not sounding the way you wanted it to. And when Eric went in and we tracked those drums and that pattern, it was like, that's when I knew that, okay, this is gonna turn out the way that I wanted it to. So
yeah, I think what we came up with is, I think whenever he was originally playing, I was like, yo, like, we'll just like completely cut the snare drum on like half these beats, and then just kind of became that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it just opened it up. And when I first came here and we were first sitting in this room talking about how we wanted the song to come around or come about, I said to him I wanted to take like an 80s song and bring it into like a live environment. So we wanted to take like a Bruce Springsteen song, but we wanted it to sound like it was being played in a stadium in front of you, right? Like in a live environment. So we wanted it to be dynamic, and we wanted it to have like sort of that open reverby type sound as opposed to like a drum machine or something like that.
So some of the synth stuff, and this was interesting, so some of the stuff came from the demo, some of the stuff we did upstairs, like we pulled up like a Selena and a couple things, but let's actually start with this. So we started the song off with this kind of pad, which, was this my pad or your pad? I don't remember. I think.
Which one?
I think this might have been my.
I think that's you.
I think this pad might have been me. I don't remember. I think it was.
That's this? You.
Yeah. So kind of very like Brian Eno, really ethereal sounding pad going on, and then right here just comes in. This was like I think a Juno pad on top. Fills it out very string like. Actually, this one's kind of interesting. So in the chorus, we use like a Selena string machine, which on its own you wouldn't think really makes sense in the song. It has almost like the very like Hot Fuss, The Killers type vibe going on it. Is this kind of underneath? Going out. This was a synth you added.
No, you did this one. I had that one.
I did add that. Okay.
Yeah, that's just like stabs in the background. It's weird you don't hear it when you listen to the song, but then if you take it out, it immediately, the bottom like drops out of the song.
Yeah. We wanted to kind of like fill out like what the palm muting guitars weren't doing, but like didn't have information wise. But at the same time, we didn't want it to feel like this like classic, 80s Peter Gabriel synth bass thing. We wanted just to kind of like Mike said, without it being in there. Then we had this keyboard. This one you had.
Yeah.
This one.
This was one that was actually on the original demo, and I played that, and it just sounded super Beach Boys-y, and I threw that in the chorus, and that's how we started getting into that part where this was starting to sound like very bright and optimistic. And then we had to come in and add a bunch of that darker synth stuff to sort of even that out, to keep it from going too much in that direction. But this was like a keyboard that I loved the sound of. Because it sounds just like Wouldn't It Be Nice by the Beach Boys.
I love the other thing too, when you know, we're kind of bring up that contrast between the bright and dark. A lot of the sound on this was room mics. Whether it was room mics on the drums, we had like 4 room mics on the piano, guitars still. We had the guitars off in an ISO booth, but we opened the doors to the live room, and I threw up a couple Omni mics. I have all the guitar room mics here sold out. You might be able to hear. It just gives a space, and it makes things a little darker and gives to that kind of stadium feel. Like. Sometimes adding reverb can make things feel very bright. You know, like even the darker reverb machines tend to sound brighter and a little pokey. So just using natural room ambience does go a long way. It makes things feel honest because it is real life reverb.
Yeah, so. And that was the thing too, was the balance between the song itself was not a very like happy song, and when I wrote it, it was this very intimate. Just little piano demo that was really about being lonely in my apartment in Hoboken, New Jersey, and being like depressed in the career that I was working in and being away from all the people that I cared about. And I wrote the song, and then we sort of took that idea and wrapped it in a much more like uplifting, optimistic sort of package, which is like my favorite type of song to listen to, which is like a sad song in a happy environment. And so then when you take the chorus and you hear something where like that lead line is, it's not as bad as it seems to be, and you match that with like this, like the sounds that we came up with in here, it sounds like it's this optimistic song. But if you actually look into the lyrics and even let the chorus finish, because it says it's not as bad as it seems to be, but barely getting by is not enough for me. And that's how I felt like I was at the time. Like, it wasn't so bad being where I was at, but it wasn't that great either. So I think the song ended up coming out sounding a lot more optimistic and bright than what the underpinning lyrics were. And I always like that sort of push and pull between the lyrics and like the actual sonic nature of the song.
One thing we also focused on with the vocals is we really made sure we didn't overstock it with background vocals. I remember we were upstairs and I think we were discussing like, what do we want to go for vocally in terms of like how we want this to sound. And I think the fact that like, you know, we're not doing the modern pop thing of like, cool, let's have like, you know, quad track vocals and then throw a bunch of these other harmonies and vocoders and artificial stuff going on. Like, it was pretty for the most part, with the exception of maybe a double, which, I mean, the Beatles had doubles, if you want to go back for that. I mean, it was, for the most part, really one vocal throughout the whole song. I don't think there's any harmonies at all.
Yeah.
Which is...
I think that was probably...
Makes you feel lonely in a good way.
I was probably pretty stubborn on that, because from the EP, it was all just the same way. It was just one vocal track. I did the whole EP with just one vocal track per song. I also thought it always sounded a bit more honest and authentic and lonely, and a lot of the songs were about loneliness. And so when we had this big poppy rock song, I didn't really, again, want to match that with like vocals that were so like overblown, or, you know, a million different layers and harmonies and choruses and things like that. And so I think you have like this pretty solo chorus line and vocal line that, like you said, at least brings some of that feel of the EP back into this sort of new direction, which is a bit more bright and open.
We have the acoustic in here, and then you have also these samples too.
Oh yeah. So
acoustic is just another layer that was just tucked in, predominantly really I think just in the choruses. Which is...
So we had... We had those three guitars coming into here, and I loved that sound because that was very Cure feeling, very like 80s pop kind of vibe to it, and that's what we were struggling with, was balancing that sound with something in the percussion that sounded like not over the top, but that acoustic guitar was like exactly what could make it veer into like that bubblegum territory.
Yeah.
And so we had to dial that back somewhere else in the mix, which we ended up doing in the drums. So basically, the one thing that I also wanted to carry forward from the EP was the use of like samples throughout the tracks, and a lot of times I'll grab it from like random things like old videos or voicemails that I secretly recorded from people and use now in my tracks. And so like this was one of the things that I wanted to sort of transition into this song, which is like, I guess, a very like Jack Antonoff inspired thing. Again, we took a lot from him. So like there's just a bunch of these random noises. Like if you want to play like, I think that's my friend when we were in Spain. And then there's a sample of my brother, one of his voicemails. That was me with one of my other friends in an Uber randomly that she had recorded. That's my fiance. But anyways, what I would do is I'd take all these random sort of sounds, just like I did sort of on the EP, and use them almost like as rhythmic sort of parts of the song. But for me personally, I always liked that because you have all these callbacks to all these friends and family and things like that that sort of take you out of the headspace of wherever you're at and put you into my headspace where I was, where I wrote the song. And so I always found that having samples throughout the song and sort of going from ear to ear and having hard panning on all of those things sort of disorients you in a way that it becomes easier to sort of get immersed in the environment that you're creating, as opposed to just having like one flat song sitting in front of you. So I included all this stuff from just random memories throughout my life. I think favorite component has to be those surf guitars. The surf guitar and that real whiny guitar. Yeah, those are my favorite. I think anytime that you have those like super reverbed out sort of surf sounding guitars, it automatically puts you in this like lonesome, like empty, kind of dark environment. And so having those in the background of the chorus, which is this big, like sort of bright thing, that was my favorite part. What's your favorite part of it?
I really like that a lot. I also might say too, for me, one of the things I really enjoyed was the drums. I think just something about, I mean Eric's performance on it was great. But I think too, just it's not a traditional just like, okay, here's like a rock thing. And that's actually like a lot of that sound too is just the room sound and a little bit. I think I might have sent some rack reverb to the snare, maybe. I think well, you know what it was? I think we tried. I think I remember we were gonna try the whole gated reverb 80s thing, and I think we went without it, and I think that was just the sound of a lot of the room mics on the drums. So I think that was that. I mean, it just really just drives through, and I love how in the chorus, like you said, the anti-chorus, how it just really opens up.
Yeah, and I think that made a huge difference because like if we just tried to match the enthusiasm of the chorus with the drums as well, it just would have gotten too much, and I think you would have lost a lot of the integrity of like what you're actually trying to say. And so by sort of having the drums duck out a little bit and having the rest of the instrumentation sort of slide in, it actually becomes more sort of honest in the way that it comes across. And I don't think that would have happened if we sort of built it up into this big thing, you know?